We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to be?
Thousands of people massing on the streets of the Ghanaian capital, Accra, last July. These are scenes not witnessed in modern times, in a country that's often viewed as an oasis of stability in a turbulent West African neighbourhood. Sharp rises in inflation, frequent power cuts, crumbling roads, and a dramatic plunge in the value of the currency brought out the crowds, organised by the unions, to show their anger at the government and what they claim to be its mismanagement of the economy. So bad is the situation, the government has been forced to ask for an IMF bailout to the tune of $1 billion. But how did it come to this? It wasn't that long ago that Ghanaians were ecstatic at the discovery of vast oil reserves off its Atlantic coast. In 2007, there were grand promises not to go the way of the other big African oil producers, whose industries quickly became riddled with corruption and whose people remained in abject poverty. So what's gone wrong, and what is the government going to do about it? We find out as the President of Ghana, John Mahama, talks to Al Jazeera. President John Mahama, first of all, welcome to Doha. Ghana right now is attracting an awful lot of concern with regard to the state of its economy. Some people go so far as to say it's even in crisis.
I wouldn't say so. Yes, we have experienced some challenges with the economy in respect of the deficit to GDP. We currently are in talks with the IMF, and I believe that those talks have been going very well. And so it gives more confidence in what we're doing, with regards to turning the economy around.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this IMF process? Because I understand that Ghana is seeking a bailout effectively of $1 billion, and the IMF has come back to you and actually are being rather stringent with the demands that they make because they're not at all happy with the condition of Ghana's economy.
Well, the talks are ongoing, and I don't want to preempt, the talks, but definitely we're going to go into a program with the IMF. It's going to be a 3-year program, and indeed, what I find comforting is that a lot of the things that the IMF see as challenges, we ourselves had identified as challenges. We had a problem, with the wage bill. We had a problem with reducing government expenditures and increasing revenues. Those are things that we had identified ourselves. And so, indeed, we're speaking the same language in terms of agreeing what the benchmarks that we must meet are, because we believe that it's healthy for our own economy. It's not the IMF forcing us to do what we have to do.
So is it true then that the IMF is demanding that there's a public sector pay freeze for 3 years?
Well, it's something that has come up because the increase in the payroll has been one of the factors that has brought us where we are. And so over the 3 years, it's not more about a freeze, it's about making the pay rise predictable over the 3 years. And so we're looking to negotiate, what those increases will be so that it makes it more predictable how government expenditure is going to go. But I think it's something that we can deal with.
So you're optimistic then that you will conclude this satisfactorily with the IMF?
I believe so. Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit then, will you, about oil production in Ghana, because it's been a huge disappointment. I can remember in 2007 many Ghanaians saying to me, this is fantastic, we're joining the big boys club, oil producing nations, and we won't go the same route as Nigeria. That's what they said. 2010, oil comes on stream, doesn't it, from the Jubilee oil field. And now we're looking at a situation where oil revenue is not making a huge amount of difference in terms of swelling your coffers, in terms of allowing you development.
Managing our people's expectations in respect of entering the oil and gas era is one of the things we need to do. Oil and gas sector is not going to suddenly overnight become the major sector in Ghana. we still have sectors that traditionally, have been the greatest contributor to GDP.
Like cocoa.
Cocoa has been a very reliable, sector for Ghana for many years, and it still is the largest contributor to our export earnings. After that, you have gold. Ghana used to be called the Gold Coast and is one of the top 10, exporters of gold. We export about 100 tons of gold a year. And then you have tourism. Because of the tradition of the slave trade, we have, some advantages when it comes to issues of tourism. And you probably would have other sectors before oil comes in. In 2013, oil's total contribution to our export revenues was $700 million, which is still nothing near what a sector like cocoa can bring, of almost more than $3 billion. And so we still are growing the oil and gas sector, but my confidence is not as much on oil as a commodity, but the transformation that gas can do for us in our economy going forward. We've just finished our national gas plants, and for the first time, gas is flowing into our thermal power enclave and beginning to produce power.
How long will it be? How
me.
long will it be then before this gas that you're excited about, and indeed other energy producing sources, comes online and actually helps stimulate growth? Growth is the real issue, isn't it? It's faltering down to just over 3%.
No, last year we grew at 7.1%. This year we're still agreeing what the growth numbers are likely to be. Certainly there might be a decline. Well, we are looking at about 6.9%, 6.7%. The IMF thinks we'll grow at about 5%. But I'm sure that we'll be able to narrow down what the expected growth is. I think some factors need to be taken in place. One, the reduction in our importation of light crude as a result of the arrival of gas. As I speak, 30 million standard cubic feet of gas are available to our power enclave in Abuadze, and that is going to be ramped up to 60 million standard cubic feet in the next 2 or 3 days. And so that is a positive development, and I think that is going to have a transformational impact on the Ghanaian economy. It is to bolster that and to step it up that we're looking at additional regasification barges and to bring LNG from places like Qatar to be able to power other thermal plants that we have. One of the major things we seek to secure is energy security.
What are you going to do about this astonishing rate of inflation? You're hitting 15%. People are suffering in very tangible ways. We've seen scenes in Accra that we don't usually associate with Ghana at all in the summer, in July. People on the streets challenging the government and actually going so far as to accuse your government of economic mismanagement.
There are some things you have to do when you're faced with economic challenges, and it needs to put on the brakes, and it involves austerity. People are going to react when you are going through an austere period. And I think that is normal, even in developed countries, when you have to take certain measures to arrest some economic challenges. People feel the pinch and they will react, naturally to that.
And there's a political price to be paid normally for austerity measures, as so many European leaders have found.
I think that you must be prepared to pay any price, to ensure that the economy of your country is returned to stability and growth. And that is what I've been doing. There are measures that have been difficult to take, but as a leader, I've had to take them in order to protect the economy and ensure that the economy continues to grow and create jobs for young people. The alternative is unacceptable. And so better to get some street protests against measures you're taking and protect the overall economy than let it crash and create a more politically unstable situation, going forward. And that's what we've been going through.
The problem is, and you can tell me if I'm reading the situation right or not, the problem is that those who are going to be squeezed particularly, it's always the squeezed middle, isn't it, in most societies, they represent your core constituency. We're talking about an election in not too distant future, in 2 years.
Yeah.
This could have severe ramifications in terms of your electoral possibilities for the next election.
I think that if you are explaining to the people what you're doing, then our people have a capacity to understand what is happening. And I do believe that we can get a plug-in, a buy-in from our people. I believe the worst is over. Things should get better. Inflation is predicted to start declining from early next year. And
whose prediction is that?
our prediction, IMF prediction, inflation is going to start to slowly decline. And by end next year, we should be in a better place than we are this year. While we're going through this austerity program, we also are, undertaking social intervention programs to cushion the poorest, segments of our society.
So you sound pretty confident, Mr. President, that you are going to be able to balance the books and get yourself out of this economic morass pretty soon.
Morass is a strong word. I think we're turning the corner, and 2015 is going to be a pivotal year for us. And I believe that in 2015 we will really turn it around, and Ghanaians will see that the economy is better for it.
Can we move on now to the region? You're in a very turbulent region, and you, as the current chairman of ECOWAS, you've been pretty busy, haven't you? Most recently, of course, in Burkina Faso, where ECOWAS went in and tried to help broker this transition deal. How confident are you that this transition deal that's currently in place is going to lead to the right results, i.e. a return to democracy and free elections? How confident are you that this will be achieved at the end of 1 year?
I have great confidence in the Burkinabe people, and I believe that we arrived at this arrangement through broad consultations with all segments of the Burkinabe population. And so I do think that with the consensus that we arrived at, this transitional government is going to be successful. Elections will be held, by November next year, and a new, constitutionally elected government will be put in place. I have confidence that the transitional arrangements will work out.
Because a lot of people, of course, are pointing out the fact that you've got a military figure in a prime position, in the position of Prime Minister.
Well, I think that you must take the opinions of the people and what they want into consideration. It would not be the ideal for me, but if that is what the broad segment of the Burkinabe population wants, let us give it to them. The important thing for us was the principle of it being a civilian-led transitional administration. So that was the first parameter. The second was that any persons who participated in the transitional government would not be able to stand for the elections, that would install a new constitutional government. They drew up a whole charter, and it was contributed to by all segments of the population: civil society organizations, religious leaders, traditional rulers. The military participated, and so they all signed on to that charter, and I believe that they're going to respect the charter.
And also at the time of Burkina Faso, of course, there was an awful lot of comment about this perhaps trend, as identified by some people, of non-democratically changing a government. Is this a trend that we are now witnessing, certainly in your region, if not more broadly in Africa?
You need to deal with these based on the peculiar circumstances under which they occur. There are circumstances under which the military take power, and we don't condone that at all. And so that is a case that ECOWAS and the AU don't condone. There are also, circumstances under which there's a broad insurrection of people as a result of some factor. And let's take the case of Burkina Faso. It was to do with Article 37 of the Constitution, which set the term limits on the president. The president decided to call Parliament to change the term limit. And there had been warning signs that people were not going to accept, the change in the Constitution. And so it just blew up that morning. People came out onto the streets.
So what is it about?
And a power vacuum was created. And so ECOWAS and AU had to respond. And we made it very clear that this was an insurrection of the people. We didn't want it to turn into a military administration, unconstitutional administration. And so we needed to manage the process to ensure that a proper transition was gone through and then return to a constitutionally elected government. And I think that it was a collaboration of all the organizations. ECOWAS was involved, the United Nations was involved, the African Union was involved. And of course, we had support from international partners. France was very helpful. The United States was very helpful.
Well, they helped get Mr. Compaoré out of country, didn't they?
Well, he left, and a power vacuum was created. And I think that the transitional administration we have would fill the vacuum.
There were also those at the time who said the Burkina Faso example was a stern warning to all of those African leaders who just don't want to step down. What is it with African leaders? They just don't want to go.
Well, I can't speak for other countries. I can speak for my country. My country has a strict 2-term limit, and I don't think that any president in Ghana can change that. It's an entrenched clause in our constitution, very entrenched, and I don't think that any leader can change that or attempt to change it. But different countries have different constitutions, and the thing is, I don't like to be judgmental. I think that democracy is not a one-size-fits-all situation. I think that people have to learn democracy. It's a process, and as society advances, democracy will continue to take root based on the culture and peculiarities of the people. This ruler that we use to measure every society, I think is not the right thing to do. I mean, we've seen examples of trying to have an interpretation of democracy for countries, and the implosion has been worse than what existed before. I mean, you have places like Iraq. I mean, with ISIS and what they're doing there today, I wonder if Iraqis feel better off, under the current situation in which they are than they did previously. These are things that we need to think of and debate and discuss as a world, and let people, learn their own democracy at their own time and not impose it on people.
You've brought us very nicely then to the security issue that is facing so much of the region. Obviously, Boko Haram springs to mind. Boko Haram has proved that it's not bound by Nigeria's borders. It's had operations inside Cameroonian territory and indeed in Chad. How far is security and this insurgency, these armed insurgencies that we're seeing, of course, in northern Mali as well, how far is this a challenge to the stability and indeed the prosperity of the region? Because ECOWAS, of course, is the economic community of West African states, but you are having to spend an awful lot of time on security matters.
Yeah, that's true. It's a concern for us in ECOWAS because additionally, Nigeria is the biggest economy in ECOWAS and, of course, the most populous state in our sub-region. And so anything that affects Nigeria is of security concern to the rest of the member states of ECOWAS. And so it's been on top of the agenda of every ECOWAS summit that we've had. We've had a progress report from the president of Nigeria on, how things are coming in the fight against Boko Haram. In our last meetings, we've invited Cameroon and Chad to join us because they share borders with Nigeria. And I believe that it will take more of a collaborative effort to deal with the issue of Boko Haram than just Nigeria dealing with it alone. In our part of the world, we have borders that are fluid, and so it's easy for an insurgent organization like Boko Haram to move in and out of different countries and do what they want and seek safe haven in other parts that are more remote in other countries and all that. So it will take a stronger coordination amongst the countries in that area to be able to overcome the menace that is Boko Haram. Incidentally, the two other countries are not in ECOWAS. Chad and Cameroon are in the Central Regional Economic Bloc. And so we need to forge a cooperation across, regional economic blocs.
The other main challenge, obviously, at the moment for the region, for particularly three members of ECOWAS, of course, is Ebola. Yes. So far, thankfully, Ghana has no confirmed cases of the virus. But how far is this, going to hinder the development of the region? And how far is it a result of the failure to invest sufficiently in basic healthcare? Because it's those countries with the least facilities that seem to have been ravaged. It's going to affect the economy of the region, and the effects are obvious already. The World Bank predicted that it will shave off 3.6% of GDP growth of the affected countries.
And for the countries that are not affected, at least a percentage point on GDP, might occur. And probably if Ghana is sliding below 7%, we could attribute it to the Ebola scare, because we can already feel some of the effects. I mean, many high-level conferences and investment delegations that were built to arrive in Ghana have been cancelled and postponed till next year.
And forget tourists to Elmina Castle, huh?
Yeah, I mean, many tourists will postpone their decision to visit, because of the scare of Ebola in the sub-region. It's very difficult for people to conceptualize that there's been no case in Cote d'Ivoire or in Ghana or in several other countries, And then also having to divert, resources to Ebola preparedness takes resources from other critical sectors. We're having to come up with a budget of $19 million to finance our national response to Ebola by providing treatment centers that may never be used if we don't have any incidents. We offered Accra as the logistical center, but I was going to talk quickly about investing in public health systems. It just happens that for those particular countries, especially Liberia and Sierra Leone, they had come out of a conflict situation. And so I wouldn't say that it was neglect of investing.
Bad government.
They've been going through reconstruction. And I believe that they are investing resources in public health, but it takes a while to build up a robust public health system. And so for Ebola to have emerged there, it emerged, where the public health systems were not as robust, or investments had not been as continuous as they have been in other countries like, say, Cote d'Ivoire or Nigeria or Ghana or several other places. And so we hope that we'll be able to overcome this disease, and then for the international community to support these countries beyond Ebola, to build up their public health systems, not only in anticipation of Ebola, but the myriad
issues of development, aren't they,
yeah,
really?
Exactly.
Finally, President Mahama, I know you don't want to talk football. I know, because I know there's currently an investigation going on into the whole World Cup situation, and I know you don't want to prejudice those proceedings. However, there are some larger points that I'd like to just explore a bit with you, and that is about whether football or your footballing institution actually reflects the condition of the national state, of the country itself. I mean, how far do you think Ghana was damaged by the scenes of footballers receiving bags of cash, kissing the cash, and it just didn't reflect terribly well on brand Ghana, the Black Star?
Definitely not. And I think that with the current commission that is sitting, I mean, it's led by a very respected judge, and I'm sure that they're going to come out with all the facts so that we learn the lessons from that and don't, repeat the situation again. Ghana is a well-respected footballing nation. We have a very good team, and we've had a very good football administration for many years. And I think that this didn't do us any good service, and we need to look at the experiences, that occurred in Brazil and take lessons from there going forward so that that never happens again.
Now, it has captured the world imagination, hasn't it? As you can imagine, those scenes. And I've heard on the grapevine that there is the possibility of a Hollywood movie going to be made about Ghana's Black Stars and the World Cup. Now, if that's indeed the case and they go ahead with a movie, I wanted to ask you finally, Mr. President, who would you like to play you? I'll give you a couple of choices. I thought Denzel Washington. I thought Forrest Whitaker. I thought Morgan Freeman.
Well, it's not in the grapevine. The other day, and the film, one of the film promoters was interviewed, and he said yes, they were going ahead with the film. I don't know whether there'll be a role for me, because I mean, I don't know what role I played in it all, but I guess that I hope that it will be as close to the truth as possible. Whatever commission report comes out, I guess the Hollywood filmmakers would be interested in establishing the facts so that it tells as closely as possible the truth. But Hollywood is about making things exciting, and so there'll be all that exaggeration, and I'm sure they'll try to make it more interesting. But well, if it sparked a whole Hollywood movie, then maybe we're salvaging something out of it.
And you haven't answered that question. Who would you like to play you?
I love Denzel Washington.
If I had to choose, I'd go for Denzel Washington as well. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President.
Thank you, Martine. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.